Yo, 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 welcome to the first episode of Pimp My Mac. In today's episode, we'll be showing you how to convert your MDD to a front drive system. So you can fit an ATX power supply in it and do some custom cooling mods. So right now, I've got this thing duct taped to the front and we're ready to go. So once again, welcome to the first episode of... What the? I thought I fixed that light switch. You guys, really? Hello, I'm Greg Rutke of Rutke Mods, and welcome to episode 1 of season 2 of my PowerPC series. In today's episode, we'll be introducing you to my PowerBook G3 Pismo. Now, this system works great. In fact, the battery still works in it. As we can see here, I have it plugged in because for some odd reason it died on me when I started filming the video the first time. But as we can see, I can unplug it and it stays on. But we're going to leave it plugged in right now so it can charge some. This system was the very last of the professional notebooks that came in black, and the very last that had the backwards Apple logo right here, as we can see. And yeah, it was the very last design that really carried over from pre-Jobs' comeback. When Steve Jobs came back, he ended up having Johnny Ive and some other designers, but mostly Johnny Ive, redesign all the systems, except for this. This was the last of the PowerBook G3 line, and it's basically a design that was introduced in 1997. Now, the design that was introduced was actually the PowerBook Wall Street, right here. Now, this is the Wall Street 2. They had a Wall Street 1, which was the design that came out right before Jobs really returned. There was also one called the Kanga, which was basically a G3 PowerBook that really was way behind on the times, but it was still the most powerful laptop of the time. A little odd. It couldn't run anything past 9.1. It couldn't officially run OS X. You could do some hacks to get it to work. But this was the very last system that came with the old boot ROM, and it was the last system of all Macs that had the original rainbow logo on it. But we're not going to really talk about this system a whole lot today. We're basically going to focus more on my Pismo. This Pismo right here has been upgraded a lot since I got it. But it's going to be upgraded more, and we'll get to that. And that's the reason why I'm filming this first for episode 1 of this season, because this is the last time you'll see it. This is also going to DOS Dude 1, aka Colin Mister, and it's a very nice system as it is. We'll show you the performance this gives right now, plus a few other things. But this is going to be upgraded, and it's going to really be cool. This was the most expandable notebook Apple ever made, and it shows. In fact, I have actually installed a drive from either an Acer or probably a Sony. It's a PC drive, but this is a dual-layer DVD burner. These systems came with, I think, either a CDRW drive or a DVD drive. This originally came with a DVD drive, and I converted it to the DVD-RW, and it works great. It's like having a high-res G4 super drive in this system, except of course it's tray load, which is pretty cool. And we'll get more into that. But right now this system runs OS 9.2.2 and Tiger. This was the only PowerBook G3 to officially support Tiger. But right now this system is a 400 megahertz G3. There were two models, the 500 megahertz G3 and the 400. So this was the low-end model, which actually was substantially cheaper, and this thing still performs. But well, we're going to get into the history, the performance and what we're going to do to it later on in the video. But right now the system has 1 gig of RAM in it, an airport card. This was the first PowerBook to support airport, and this actually was the second notebook Apple made to support airport. The one before that was known as the Lombard, and it didn't have FireWire, so it only supported up to Panther officially. Of course it can run Tiger, and it didn't have airport card. This does. So we'll get into that and what this system can do, and let's get on to it. Okay, so here's my two PowerBook G3s. We'll start off with the Wall Street real quick just to show you where the design ended up with the Pismo. Now the Pismo's case is basically identical to the Lombard, except the PowerBook G3 series, it says PowerBook G3 series here on the Lombard, and on the Pismo it doesn't. It just says PowerBook. They killed off the G3 series moniker. But still, this was the last of the old professional PowerBooks, last of the old era, last old world ROM, last system with the retro rainbow logo here, if I can get it to focus. This is actually a very good looking system. It's one of the last systems to officially say PowerPC on it, and a lot of other things. It's a really nice system, but this one has a lot of problems. I got it from a good deal from a friend, Curtis Murray, who's a big fan of my series and videos, and thank you again, Curtis. This system's going to get its own video in the future, but I actually ended up buying another one because this one's a little worse for wear. It's got a bad hinge, which I already knew about. That was disclosed to me before I got it. It was still a good deal, but the other problem was during shipment it got dropped, and this was one of the last Macs to have eggshell, basically fragile case parts on it. So there's a big chunk missing out right here, and here I'll show you real quick how fragile it can be. It just breaks off. Actually, I guess all the broken pieces just I've already broken off, but yeah, it there it goes. Oops. Like I said, it's very brittle plastic, but you know, here's the IRDA port and a bunch of other things. The modem covered door likes to flip itself up, but this system Actually the Wall Street one. I don't think the Kanga had this, but this system was the first system to introduce the easy optical drive bay swap system here. You just can just pull it out, and now all these drives and the batteries are not compatible with the Lombard and Pismo. The Lombard and Pismo's drives and stuff are compatible with each other. On this, they aren't. They've got separate connectors, different kinds of connectors. But the nice thing about this system is everything more or less works, except the inside of the computer itself. There's a lot of issues. The original drive that was in this had, well, let's not go into major detail, but we'll go into more detail in the future. But just to let you know, the card slots don't work, and these have auto eject systems where you'd have the card slot in like that, you'd press a button and it goes pop like that by itself. All that mechanism's not working, and the card slots aren't working, so you can't plug anything USB into it. This system didn't come with USB, and that's just one of the few problems. It won't let me install an operating system, but if you transfer the drive to another system, install the operating system, then put the drive back in here, it works fine, more or less. There's a few issues. OS 9 for some reason won't boot up. It gives out an error and stuff, but yeah, that's basically this system. This was the basis design for our main topic today, the Pismo. The Pismo was introduced in 2000 with the second generation of the iBooks, and like I said before, this was the first PowerBook to have Wi-Fi built into it. It was also the last Mac notebook that I know of that had, and it was the only Mac notebook, come to think of it, to have two FireWire ports. On the back of this system we have the power plug. Let's focus this a little better. Here we go. Audio in, audio out, two USB 1.1s, Ethernet, two FireWire, then S-video out, VGA, dial-up modem, then an IRDA. Okay, this was the only system ever, notebook, to ever come with two FireWires, as far as I know. And the Lombard had, instead of the FireWire, it had a SCSI port right here, and you could buy an adapter to use SCSI on these. But I'll show you what the SCSI port looks like, because it's similar on the Wall Street here. This is what the SCSI port looks like. But yeah, this is the back of a Wall Street. We'll go into more detail about that in a future video. This system was the system that was in episode 19 of last season when I opened it up. I explained to you that the PRAM battery, the PRAM battery, whichever you'd like to call it, would prevent this thing from booting if the battery was dead. So I just took the battery out. There's no point in having it in here. But this system is super expandable, and I don't know if I mentioned this. The Wall Street's battery still works. Yeah, I did mention that, I believe. And this battery still works, though it's got some issues with it. It holds a nice charge in it, but the operating system doesn't read it properly, and it will cut off about halfway through its charge usage. You can leave this thing running in the boot menu forever, but when it's in an operating system, for some reason it detects it as being empty really quick. It's still enough to be able to move it around, and it's still enough to use it without the battery for a while, but will unexpectedly just go into sleep mode. And that's because it thinks it has a low battery when it doesn't. But we'll open this up real quick. These levers right here are really nice, really cool. Like I've said in the past, it's a very expandable system. It was the most expandable system. It's got one PC card slot here, just like would carry over to the titanium and all the PowerBook G4s. This was also on the Lombard. And the Wall Street was the last one to have a 2-slot. But yeah, we'll pull this out. And here's what the battery module looks like. You can actually take the battery module, it's not focusing again, there we go. You can actually take this battery module and put it into the optical drive bay too. You can have 2 batteries in here to double the battery life, which was nice. And you know, it's you could also swap the optical drive bay out for any bay. We'll show you real quick. Pull this out, put the battery in here. This is a really neat feature. It was also in the Wall Street, although like I said, it uses a different thing. But yeah, here's what it looks like with the battery. Optical drives are actually wider, and it's got this little door here. So when you put an optical drive in it, you can actually, it will actually flip this door down. Really neat design. You can just take the optical drive, line it up, and when you start pushing it in, that door goes down and it goes in. They also had aftermarket zip drives, floppy drives, etc., you could put in this bay. And then this bay right here was strictly for battery, as far as I know. But still, when you put the battery back in, you know, you got that. Now we'll go into this optical drive real quick. This started out as a DVD ROM module, and this is the original label, which is on the bottom. And then this is what the top would have looked like. This is the original DVD drive. It would be in there like that. But of course I swapped this out with a dual layer DVD drive dated June of 2005. This is a very nice drive. This was the only dual layer drive that had a similar faceplate mounting point. This is so I didn't have to have a slot load drive or anything like that, which would take away from the original appearance of everything. And it only required a little teeny weeny bit of modification, which we'll show you. We'll open this up, shortly turn it on, just to eject the drive. If it turns on, come on. There it goes. We'll eject the drive. Come on. Give me the drive. Open the tray. Okay. Turn that off. And this is what the inside of the drive tray looks like. Now if we look down here, there's a mounting screw right here that fit up with the faceplate there. Then there's a mounting screw here that too fit up with no problem. But here, the screw hole's actually over here instead of right here. I had to drill a small hole in it to make it fit. But as we can see, it fits fine now. It even works with the emergency eject button. if I grab something to eject it, line it up, and there we go. Really nice design there. Anyway, so that's basically what the inside of this looks like. Also, this was the second system to have the translucent keys, or the bronze keyboard. This is a slightly bronze keyboard. Unlike the Wall Street. The Lombard was the one to introduce the bronze keyboard. This is just a black keyboard. I actually kind of like these keys better. But, yeah, this is the bronze transparent keyboard here. And the keyboard opens up just like any other Mac that had the flip down keyboard. The Wall Street's actually pretty different, but this is what the inside looked like. And we're going to go inside and show you some of this. We'll take it apart slowly and show you just how neat it is. Then we'll piece it back together and show you how it performs. So let's get to it. Okay, first off, we're going to take these two screws out here to remove the heatsink cover, and then we'll just take it from there. Okay, so we have the screws out now, and this cover just pops right off. And here is the CPU card, which has the RAM slot built into it. Pretty neat. There's also one on the back, which we'll show you in a second. This was the last system that used the could use the full-size DIMMs, which I have a full-size DIMM on the other side, which we'll show you. Here's the heat sink, and it pipes down into here. Then it's got a small fan here. Now, here's the airport card. I don't see why to take that out. It's just a regular airport card. But here's the optical drive. This is pretty neat. This is such an easy, I mean, this is the hard drive, of course. But anyway, this is the easiest hard drive to remove. You just pull it up like this, then it just comes out. And you remove the 4 screws, and pop the ribbon cable off, and presto. Now, this isn't the original hard drive. This is actually a 30 gig from, I think, my Titanium. I don't know, 2003. Okay, this was, yeah, this would have been from my iBook, I think, my iBook G4. But it's just the 30 gig, 5400 RPM. It's a temporary drive. I'm going to be replacing it with an SSD, an SSD, which, like in episode 2 of last season. And it should speed it up amazingly well. So anyway, I'm going to remove the 2 screws right here, and we'll take the heatsink cover off, the heatsink itself, come to think of it, and we'll take it from there. Okay, so we've got the 3 screws out, 2 here and 1 here, and this should just pop right out, just like that. And here we have the CPU card. Here's the 400MHz G3, and let's pull it out. We'll pull up on here. Let's see here. I might need to have something to help me pry it out. Grab this. And if you do this carefully, it will come right out. So pull here, and it's not coming out. 1 second, guys. Okay, so I've knocked it loose. We can pull up on here, and here's the CPU card. It uses a similar connector to what is in a Power Mac. Really neat. Here's what a full-size DIMM looks like. This is a 512 megabyte module, and then we can compare it to the smaller module here. This is what a regular sized, well, I guess a half height DIMM would look like, which would go in later models. Then once again, here's what the G3 looks like. Now I'm showing you this multiple times because we're going to upgrade this to a G4. If you look here, we have a 500 megahertz PowerBook G4 titanium. The insides of this, all of this is going to Colin. It's going to be his. It's in really bad shape. Broken hinges. That's what raw titanium looks like, by the way. You know, it's not in good shape. But the only thing I want out of it is this board here has the 500 megahertz G4. Now, this board right here, this is the original model of the titanium. Then, of course, they replaced it with the gigabit Ethernet model and then the DVI systems. This has pin compatible G4 in it, which will fit right in this card. And as we can see, this is what the two look like compared to each other. Okay, so this is going into this card right here, and then it will go back into here, and I'll have a G4 Pismo. The other thing is the original model of the titanium is literally all the same hardware on the board as what's in this. Now, of course, the titanium wasn't as expandable, and it had a higher resolution widescreen display compared to this 14-inch here. But other than that, it had the same GPU in it and whole basic layout. I mean hardware, modem, you know, ports. All the ports are basically the same, except it's got one FireWire in it. And it's basically the same hardware completely, just with a G4 instead of a G3. Then when the gigabit Ethernet model came out, it changed, different CPUs and stuff. But this right here is a 7410 G4, and it's going to be replacing the XPC 750 that's right here. So yeah, this is going to sacrifice for that, and then Colin can keep all the rest of the parts. It's a pretty nice looking system, at least some of it. I've tested the hard drive, that works. Only thing this system's actually missing is the optical drive. So anyway, that's what's sacrificing to make this a G4 Pismo, and it will be able to run Leopard with not a huge amount of problem. The GPU is not going to be super happy running Leopard, but everything else should work great. So anyway, I'll piece this system back together, and then we'll continue the video by turning it on and playing around with it. So let's go. Okay, so before we plug this in and go over everything installed on it, I thought we'd quickly touch on the default power supply that came with the Lombard and the Pismo. This has been nicknamed the Fire Brick, and that's because these fire bricks caught on fire sometimes. They'd overheat and just flame up. Now, it was only a handful probably that officially did it, that we know of in looking at the past history. Most of these worked non-stop with no problems, and hopefully this will be one of them. But this power supply looked very professional. Apple did a recall, and a lot of news media said it was a full recall. It wasn't. It was a case by case. If your power supply caught on fire, they'd replace it for free, and they'd probably replace it with a yo-yo, which doesn't look as professional as this fire brick here. I like this power brick. It looks very good with these systems. It uses the same connector, of course, as on the clamshell yo-yos, and it works quite well. This has never really gotten hot at all since I bought it. You can get them pretty cheap because no one wants to buy them usually, and they usually don't advertise this as a PowerBook power supply for some reason. You actually have to look up the model number to find it on eBay. So yeah, that's the fire brick. It's kind of unique. It's got the wire sticking out the side instead of from the top. Don't know why they did that, but they did it, and it still works quite fine. So we'll take it and plug it into the back of this system, and we'll power on the system. So here we go. Okay, so before we really get into Tiger right here, we're going to go over the PC cards real quickly. This is the USB card that I use in my titanium, the USB 2 card. Very nice card. And then this is the Airport Extreme compatible Belkin card. Same chipset as in the Airport Extremes. Wireless G, etc. It's a good card. I've got two of them, one for my titanium and one for the Pismo. And that's just a quick thing over the card. Now the battery here always gives a different reading. I think it's all software. It doesn't report completely properly. When I first charged this up the very first time, it almost had 4,000 mAh in it. And it keeps dropping, but I don't think the charge is actually dropping. The OS is still updating, just not reading everything right. Don't know why, but it does work. The first time I had it charged up, it ran for an hour and a half with no issues. So it's charging right now. It's at 25%. And yeah. Anyway, we're running Tiger here. This is a very, very nice system. It's very usable. The G3 in this flies, and that's because it's got a megabyte of L2 cache, which makes a huge difference. iBooks have less L2 cache, and they suffer usually because of that. But you know, like I said, it's a very useful system. Let's see here. We've got ATI Rage M3 in it. The FireWire, of course. Then here's the optical drive and what it can do. As we can see here, DVD write plus RDL. It is a dual layer. It will read dual layer DVDs, and when I have the G4 upgrade in it, it will allow me to, of course, install Leopard with the optical drive. Of course, with the hack, just to fool the CPU speed. But yeah, that's basically the hardware setup here. And if we open up 10.4 Fox, we'll really get into the meat and bones of this. This system's still pretty darn useful for what it is. It can do a lot of things that an iBook clamshell, for instance, just can't. It even probably outperforms the first iBook G3 Snow. It's a very amazing machine. And with the G4 upgrade, there's, believe it or not, still people that use Pismos on a daily basis. Of course, the crowd's starting to thin out a whole lot because, well, they're, 18 years old. But, they work still, and people still use them daily. And even with the G3, it's still very useful. We'll open up Facebook, and it will load it on up if I have the right user agent on here. Here we go. And that's how quickly it will load up. Very, very cool, very useful. It can basically do anything. And we can go over and, for instance, look up my Rutke Mods page here. And it should load it on up in a second. Here we go. We can click on that. And here's my main page. Very quick, very responsive. It loads a lot quicker than an iBook. It's amazing, like what this thing can do. Of course, since it's running Tiger, it can also do Classic. And of course, since it's a G3, it does take some time to load it up, but it does load it faster than an iBook. It's amazing. It's like I've been saying, it's very useful today still. It can do everything that most other PowerPC Macs can do. Of course, a little slower with the G3 in it, but it's still faster, like I said, than an iBook. So yeah, we've got Classic loaded up here. And of course it will be able to run classic things. But let's not worry about that right now. What we'll do is we'll restart it and get into the boot menu, and we'll boot it into OS 9, then wrap up the video. So let's go. Okay, so we're in the boot menu here. This was, of course, the... Whoops. Okay, so we're in the boot menu here. This is, of course, the boot menu design that ended up being the boot menu design they used to the very last PowerPC system. Of course, it's technically the second revision. Like I showed you, the first revision on the original clamshell Blueberry. This is the design that ended up winning out. So yeah, we'll load up OS 9, and we'll show you OS 9 real quick and wrap up the video. And welcome to OS 9. OS 9 is a very neat operating system for these PowerBook G3s. There's a really neat feature. Any PowerBook G3 that has the swappable drives and batteries and stuff can use this feature right here. This will be able to show you what's in the bays. This does not come in OS X. And, we can pop a bay out here, and then it will tell us that the bay has been removed. So, for instance, we'll remove the optical drive, and it should disappear. Then if we plug one back in, it should re-register like that. And then we, of course, can plug the other one in. And there we go. This is the same, it works the same on the Wall Street and the Lombard. Pretty darn cool. And then right now we have the Airport B card, the internal one, connected to my Wi-Fi. So if we go over to Classilla, we can load up the internet. Now, OS 9 flies on this computer. It's a very, very impressive setup here. And we can take this and, for instance, let's go to Google. And here we go. We're in Google. Very cool. Very, very useful for what it is. Of course, OS 9's OS 9. It's not modern in today's standards, but it's still, you know, very useful, especially for older software. We've seen it before in my series. Here's some of the specs. We can go over to the profiler, and everything works quite well. And the neat thing is this will even work with the optical drive. It works fine. As we can see, where is it? I don't know where it went. It's probably because I ejected it. But it does work. I promise you guys that. But I don't know why it disappeared there. It does work though. So anyway, that's my PowerBook G3 Pismo. It's a very, very nice system. It's very expandable, and it's going to be awesome with the G4 in it. And I can't wait to get it in there. And anyway, so that's the end of this video, and thank you for watching. This has been a Rutke Mods video.